Hello there, and welcome to the project portion of the Fetch week. So you spent the last however long, a couple days probably, learning about Fetch, and you would have watched this video, maybe read this tutorial, and learned about the Fetch function in JavaScript. And then you would have watched this video to learn about how the Fetch function works with APIs, REST APIs, web APIs. To get data from other sources and use that data in your own code and in your own web page. So I especially recommend watching this video. I haven't been super strict about like making sure people are doing much. By that I mean like make sure that either people are reading or watching the videos. Like I haven't been super strict about anything because I think it's up to you how you learn and what's most useful. But I will say for this specific project, this video will be, super helpful because I do basically this project in this video. I don't do the whole thing, but I do a lot of like coding myself and using the Wikipedia API to fetch data and stuff. So I recommend going through and reading that. That will be a good introduction to how the code works. But I'm going to walk through it anyway in this video just a little bit, just to introduce you to the project and to maybe introduce like how I would approach it. So as always, this week you are working out of the next week's directory in the project repo. And your goal here is to use the fetch function to fetch some data about a Wikipedia article and then do something with it, basically. I want you to use that data to create like an alternative visualization for a Wikipedia article. You can choose whatever article you want, and you can choose whatever visualization you want. All of that stuff is kind of up to you. But what I'm going to be looking for when I'm grading is, do you call the fetch function and do you parse the JSON that comes back? Do you use at least 4 of the properties that come back in that JSON? And do you have at least 5 CSS rules that style your content? So a little throwback to a previous week. Now that we're getting into some of these later weeks, it's more about like combining different things that you've already seen. So that's the plan. That's the goal this week with this project. So let's let's dive into the code. Let me go to my repo. Let's go to week 9 fetch, and nothing too shocking. You have an index.html file, script.js file, and a styles.css file. Let me open some of these up with Atom. As always, you can use whatever editor you want. If you want to use Replit, that's cool too. It's kind of up to you. It's all good. I'm just going to open up all 3 of those files. I actually don't even know if styles.css has anything in it. I don't remember. We'll find out in a second. Oh, it does. Okay, cool. All right. So like every week, I would start this week's project by reading through the code kind of line by line. You've got some skeleton HTML that just sets up the outline of the page. It's got a title. Looks like I'm going to be loading a cat article. On load we call load content, and then I've got an empty div and an empty UL with IDs. Okay. It's all good. So I'm going to look at the load content function in script.js, and here we go. Load content. This calls the fetch function to fetch a specific page, in this case the cat page, and gets the JSON back, and then uses the concepts that I talked about in the APIs video to take apart that response, to take apart that data, and to build the HTML. So again, I'm not going to read through every single line in this video because that'd be pretty boring, but I recommend you, like when you are first starting this project, just read through every single line so that you understand exactly what it's doing before you try to change everything. But looks like there's a for loop that iterates over article.links, which is going to be an array, and then builds elements from each link. Okay, and then it calls load images, and this is I don't know. I don't want to say this is interesting because it's me telling you that something I made is interesting. So it's up to you whether this is interesting. But the thing I want to point out in this function is that this is an example of calling an API based on what you already got from a different API. And if that sounds confusing, what I mean by that is in load content, I call the fetch function to get some JSON data back, and this is about the cat article. And then I pass the images array into load images. So images is an array of file names. And what I do is I iterate over each file name in that array, and then I call fetch again for each image to get like the full URL path of that specific file name. And I do some processing, but then I create an image element and then add it to the page. So, you know, whether you want to keep load images or not, entirely up to you, but I wanted to show that it's possible to sort of stack API calls or fetch function calls and to sort of iteratively get more and more data as you need it. So yeah, up to you whether you keep this in or if you change it or if you get rid of it entirely. Totally up to you. Okay, so that's, you know, that's the code. Let's maybe jump over to the page itself. Let me open that up. And yeah, there you go. So notice that like the images are kind of like slowly popping in, and that's a result of that like stacked API call where I call fetch to get the image, the data for the entire article, and then I load each image kind of individually, getting the full URL of each one. But this is, maybe I should start by going to the Wikipedia article for cat. I don't know why this is my go-to, but it is. Wikipedia cat. Sure. So this is what Wikipedia shows. This is how Wikipedia, you know, displays the data for the cat article, and it's got, you know, various images throughout and, you know, links inside of the text and whatnot. And what I'm doing here is I'm loading the JSON using the fetch function, and then I am showing all of the images up front. So here's a bunch of cat pictures and a moose for some reason. Well, whatever. And then I just have a bunch of links. So if you want to go to a bunch of different Wikipedia articles that have something to do with cats, here you go. And this can be, you know, maybe the start of a Wikipedia rabbit hole or something. But, you know, this is an example of taking the data, the same data that this page shows, and just showing it in a different way. And that's your goal. Your goal is to take, you know, it doesn't have to be the cat article. So find your favorite Wikipedia article or an article that you think will be interesting to visualize, and then modify the code to load that instead, and then modify, you know, further modify the code to look at different fields in the JSON response. And for that, like I said, I already kind of did that in the other video, so I don't think I'm going to do it again. But if you want sort of examples of digging through the API and the documentation and stuff and like figuring out what fields are even available, I would recommend going back and watching this video for that content. But this week's content is already pretty long, so I'm not going to like sit here and do it again just because it would just make you sit through yet more video content, which is probably not what you feel like doing right now. But if you want more examples, you know, check out that video. Okay. So I'll say, you know, your end goal is to create something like this page, but for your own Wikipedia article and for your own like personal preferences around visualization. So maybe you don't just have a big block of images. Maybe you do something, you know, something different, and it's totally up to you. I don't want to fence you in at all. Yeah, cool. So I think that's about as far as I'm going to go. Again, for more examples of how to code that part up, I would recommend checking out this video, but I just wanted to sort of introduce the project and how I would start going about it. So yeah, as always, I'll say thanks for watching, and I am really looking forward to what y'all come up with in the next week. All right, bye.